So it's summer, obviously, or as the left calls it, a climate emergency. And, this is another place where the crazy has gotten out of control, where the Renfield laughter is everywhere. But it's a story that's not being entirely told. If you're watching the mainstream media, you're not seeing it at all. And I don't even think right-wing media is covering it enough. This is a hot summer. It is very, very hot. And in fact, the climate of the Earth has warmed about 2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880, which is when the industrial era kind of gets into into full-blown strength. The question of whether it is the industrial era, it's industry that has warmed the Earth, is still an open question. We don't know that for sure. We can't prove that's the reason, but it kind of makes sense that it might be. So it might be part of why the Earth is warming, but it could be other things as well. The Earth has gotten warm and cold before. Remember, the Great Lakes used to be glaciers. I mean, the climate of the Earth changes. But you know what else has happened since 1880? Here's another thing that's happened. The climate has gone up a couple of degrees. But the life expectancy, at least in the U.S., has doubled from 1880, when the climate started to make this current climb. Life expectancy has gone from 39 to 78. So Bjorn Lomborg writes this. He says, across the world, low temperatures are much more dangerous than high ones. It's more dangerous to get cold than it is to get hot. 500,000 people die each year from heat, but more than 4.5 million die from cold. While rising temperatures will increase heat deaths, they will also decrease cold deaths. A recent Lancet study found that rising temperatures since 2000 have on net reduced the number of temperature-related deaths. Researchers concluded that by the end of the 2010s, rising temperatures globally were causing 116,000 more heat deaths annually, but leading to 283,000 fewer cold deaths a year. So it's a nuanced situation, right? And we don't know exactly why it's happening. We're not sure at all whether we can control it and whether anything we do has anything to do with it. All in all, it is, when it comes to how many lives have been lost, it's been a net positive for life. It has been a good thing for life. But it's an emergency. It's an emergency. Whenever the Democrats don't get what they want, it's an emergency. They believe in democracy until they lose the election. Then it's an emergency. And they keep pressing Biden, this poor guy. Now he has COVID. Before he could barely knew where he was. They want him to declare an emergency mostly because Joe Manchin is not going to go along with their climate Green New Deal craziness because he comes from a coal state, because he doesn't want to shut down coal, especially when they have nothing to replace it for it. But, when the left doesn't get their way, the worst thing about democracy to the left is democracy. Whenever there's democracy, they say this democracy is terrible for democracy. So Biden is being urged to declare that he has emergency powers, because that would, then he would have special superpowers that he could stop, he'd be able, if he has emergency powers, he is then legally able to fly into the sky and dump water on the sun to cool it down. And this is Biden being pushed by the left. It's cut 18.
Climate change is literally an existential threat to our nation and to the world. So my message today is this: since Congress is not acting as it should, and these guys here are, but we're not getting many Republican votes, this is an emergency, and I will look at it that way. I said last week, and I'll say it again loud and clear. As president, I'll use my executive powers to combat the climate crisis in the absence of congressional actions, notwithstanding their incredible action.
They're applauding. Yeah, we didn't like this voting thing. We don't like that democracy republic. We don't want that anyway. Stop the sun from shining. It's like this lunacy. It's absolute lunacy. I don't think he's going to get away with it. I think the courts are going to stop him if he goes too far. But still, this is what they want to hear. So he's doing it for the base. The base wants to hear that democracy is over because the sun is hot. And of course, he went on in very touching ways to talk about the terrible toll that pollution is taking on him personally. This is cut 19.
And just up the road to a little school I went to, Holy Rosary Grade School. And because it was a 4-lane highway that was accessible, my mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk. And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening? You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. And why for the longest time, Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation.
People were like, wait, what, the president has cancer? The president has cancer? Luckily, the White House instantly, issued a correction. They said, no, he doesn't have cancer. He has dementia. I mean, you already know. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's funny because this is a story he used to tell that he had asthma. In the original story, he had asthma, so it's gotten much worse. Much worse. This has been a worldwide, but certainly Western-wide, it's not bothering China because they're not doing anything about it, but it has been a West-wide disaster. The green agenda has been a disaster. Here's a list. I took this from the Wall Street Journal, but I could have gotten it anywhere. Soaring oil and natural gas prices, obviously. Electricity grids on the brink of failure. Energy shortages in Europe with worse to come, the free world's growing strategic vulnerability to Vladimir Putin and other dictators. These are some of the unfolding results in the last year caused by the West's utopian dream to punish fossil fuels and sprint to a world driven solely by renewable energy. And so all of this stuff is affecting real people, right? We have supply shortages. We have the grids going down. This is all because of the Green New Deal. It's all because they don't have the power to replace fossil fuels. It doesn't exist. And what's their response? Here's Pete Buttigieg. He's going to tell you how to handle this. Cut 7.
The more pain we are all experiencing from the high price of gas, the more benefit there is for those who can access electric vehicles. It's why we're hoping you and your colleagues might reconsider opposing the reduction of EV upfront prices with tax credits.
So you're saying the more pain we have, the more benefit we're going to get.
Of course.
I think that's what I heard you say. You said the more pain that we have.
That's what you heard me say.
That's what I heard you say.
I know you want me to say it so bad, but
okay.
Honestly, sir, what we're saying is that we could have no pain at all by making EVs cheaper for everybody, and we'd love to have your support on that.
So we just got to buy everybody a Tesla. It's just 40, 50 grand. And of course, if the battery goes bad, it's another 14,000. Pete can afford this. Pete can afford a Tesla. Why? Because we're paying his salary. They're all flying private jets around. They're all, obviously not one of them believes that this is the emergency they say it is, or they wouldn't be behaving the way they are. They wouldn't, there was all this stuff, a big chart of how these short flights that celebrities take, 9 minutes, 10 minutes, they get in their jet to get over LA traffic, I guess. Everyone's yelling at Kylie Jenner because she took a 17-minute flight. I'm not yelling at Kylie Jenner because I have no idea who Kylie Jenner is. So I'm not yelling at her because I don't know where she is. But here's the story. Here is the story that nobody is reporting. I'm taking this from The Federalist, Beth Whitehead. If you skim the front pages of major corporate news outlets, you'll find no mention of the economic protests raging in Spain, Morocco, Greece, and the United Kingdom. On the Washington Post homepage these days, you'll find headlines such as how to deal with a chatty coworker who won't get out of your office. You'll find the story of a gay union entitled, "There's 2 Yentas plus 1 senator, a lifetime together." Corporate media has largely glossed over the tens of thousands of farmers, maybe as much as 40,000 people in the Netherlands, which only has 40,000 people, who clogged up roadways and distribution centers by holding Canadian trucker convoy-style demonstrations. According to the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, which records protests worldwide, recorded protests of more than 120,000 people in France, 100,000 in Spain, 10,000 in Greece, 10,000 in Kazakhstan, 10,000 in Sri Lanka, 10,000 in India. Sri Lanka, they keep calling that a protest. That was a revolution. Sri Lanka, a country where they can't even afford to buy a vowel but put between the S and the R, right? It's just Sri Lanka. Pat Sajak keeps saying, no, buying a vowel is a good deal. But they're like, I know, but we got to eat. They finally threw their dictator. He's not really a dictator technically, I guess, but he was basically a dictator. They threw him out because he's telling people that they've got to do organic farming and their food is disappearing. They're hungry. They're hungry because of the Green New Deal. And this is a place, they mentioned this, Tunku Varadarajan mentioned this, Norman Borlaug, one of the people the Greens hate. This is the guy who he did more to feed the world than any man before or since. He built chemical fertilizers and crops bred to be disease resistant. And this is what made Sri Lanka, which, without the A between the S and the R, is Sri Lanka. It put them on the path to agricultural abundance. And now the president, the former president now, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, said, no, we've got to do without that. We've got to do organic farming. And of course, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so Gotabaya, it was his name, got to say goodbye because suddenly people stormed his palace and tossed him out. You know, if you watch what's happening, and all of this isn't directly related to the Green New Deal, I'm not saying it is, but if you watch, you know, the Prime Minister of the UK just resigned. Italy just resigned. A lot of people leaving town, blowing town, especially in some of these smaller countries, because things are going badly. And not all of that is related to the Green New Deal, but all of it is related to bad governance, which is made worse by the Green New Deal, making prices go up, making it impossible to face down a bum like Putin, just a nasty dictator. We can't face him down because Europe is buying their energy from him instead of from us. We could be producing it, but we're not. And the thing is, you know, I'm for cleaner energy. I'm sure you are too, but we can't do it yet. This is the thing. Here's Bjorn Lomborg again. He says the world gets almost 80% of its energy from fossil fuels, and even if all current climate policies were fully implemented by mid-century, fossil fuels would still provide more than half of all energy used worldwide, according to the International Energy Agency, and prices would skyrocket. This is Maoism, okay? Chairman Mao, late 50s, early 60s, basically would declare how much the farmers were going to make, how many crops the farmers were going to grow, what degree they were going to, and he just said, just do it. You're just going to do it. This is it. And they had a kind of one of those stupid Soviet theories where the science is supposed to be in line with their stupid Soviet communist socialist ideas. And they said to the farmers, look, this is how much you have to produce. And if you didn't produce for Mao, it wasn't a good thing. You know, you wound up dead. So people were literally sending in pictures saying, here, Chairman Mao, here's my land with all the crops. And they were piling crops on. And then the next peasant would take it down the line and he'd pile the same crops because they couldn't produce them. They couldn't produce them. It was called the illusion of superabundance because the Communist Party kept lying to both the people and to itself that the food was being produced. Up to 50 million people died in the famine that was produced by that, okay? Because they didn't have the ability to grow what communism, what the people at the top told them they were supposed to grow. And now we've got Klavan Nazi in Davos flying his private jet over to Al Gore's mansion and saying, the people have to stop driving the Volkswagens, but let me get in my private jet and fly around and tell them to stop driving the Volkswagen so we have a green world. You know, it can't be done. We don't have the technology. Simple answer. Simple answer. Put some money into research and let the people have their energy so they can live. Let us live in abundance, not in non-abundance. Let us have no pain. Pete Buttigieg, let us have no pain. Let us have abundance and wealth and air conditions that work and electronic grids that don't collapse and gas we can afford. It was $2.50 just when Donald Trump, the evil Donald Trump left. He left us with gas we could afford. Now it's twice that. It has doubled under Biden. And some of it is from the Putin war. But we wouldn't even be fighting the Putin war if we stood up to Putin, and we'd be able to stand up to Putin if we had the gas that he is selling us. All of it, again, it always depends on silence. It always depends on silence. Just like transgenderism, it depends on shutting people down because the truth is so damned obvious. The truth is obvious. Every sane person can see the truth. If we don't show you the protests, they're not happening. It's not until you look out the door and you see the crowds out there that they're happening. But if we don't show them to you, maybe nobody will notice that everybody is hurting because of the stupidity of the people in power. The COVID lockdowns and now the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is one of the stupidest things that has ever been done, and it is ruining our countries. It is ruining our country. It's sending people into debt. They don't know whether to pay for gas or pay for food. In places around the world, it's bringing people out into the streets and they're covering it up. So you have to talk. We have to, it's just like in Dracula. We're sitting around going, well, can we afford, gas, or can we afford food? How are we going to build our businesses? How are we going to do things in real life? Are we going to be able to take a vacation? And meanwhile, off stage, there are the Greens, and this is what they're saying. If you need more Klavan, and everyone needs more Klavan, like and subscribe, and also subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast.